Thanks for welcoming me to Norwich again. I can't remember how many times I've been here. Is it 2007 times?
Well, no, 2007 was your first.
This is one of the places I've spoken at most. And there's probably about a half dozen places in the whole UK that I've spoken at a lot, and this is probably one of them. And this subject is something I've been interested in for absolutely years, but I just never get around to writing it. It's funny because the science that I needed to put in the book, a lot of that science wasn't actually done until the time span while I was writing the book. Some of the really important stuff I felt was only done in the 6 months while I was writing it. So it's almost like a wee force of destiny that I wasn't supposed to. I got caught out. I was doing a meditation. I was doing a workshop in London, right, in March, right, and I was leading a meditation. Right, this is really cool. Leading my meditation, and one of the meditations I do is I drop everyone down to the quantum field. So what we do is we go through in our imagination, we go through the layers of biology. So we go into like our heart, and we go into the cells, into the DNA. We imagine the atoms that make up the DNA. We imagine going inside the atoms to the protons, neutrons, electrons, protons, and morons. And we go inside those, and we imagine dropping down to the fabric of reality. And I just said the words, and we're now at a place of total stillness, where only consciousness resides. Now this is the point where I had a little bit of music where I was getting to that place of total stillness. My phone rang, right? But what I did have was it on silent, right? So it was actually on silent, so no one heard it ringing. But in my panic, I'm leading a meditation, you know, a really cool meditation. And in my kind of panic of, instead of turning the call off, I swiped it on. But I hadn't really realised. So this is when I got to the words, "You're now at a place of total stillness, where only consciousness resides." And then my mum's voice came through, "Hello!" But it gets better. It actually gets better. Because my face just went pure red then. The timing was that you couldn't have made it up. I mean, everyone laughed about it then when I explained that it was Mother's Day, you see. And it was my mum phoning to say thanks for the flowers. So when I explained that story, I said I'm assuming that it was my mum, so everyone thought it was funny. When I told my mum at the lunch break, she was absolutely mortified. She's, that didn't happen. Tell me that did not happen. I go, no, it did, Mum. And everyone in the room heard me saying, yeah, everyone heard you saying, is there anybody there? I mean, the time, I'm still flabbergasted at the timing. You know, a place of total stillness, where only consciousness resides. Cute, my mum. So anyway, I think stuff like that, I think that I wrestled with this broad area since I was a child. I remember one of my earliest memories of thinking spiritual thoughts is when I was at school. I went to a Catholic school in Stirling, in Scotland, a school called St Modens. And somewhere along the line, I became afraid to question anything I was taught at the school. And I had this picture in my mind that God was a man with a white beard on a cloud, and that I was scared to think anything different from what I was taught. I mean, I was taught a lot of love and compassion and stuff. That's most of what I remember about it. But there was a couple of other wee things. And in my child imagination, what I felt is that everybody was interconnected to everyone else, and everything. You know, the leaves and the trees was actually part of me, and there was like a field of brain stuff, your mind, who you really are, your soul, I think is how I used to refer to it, which I still do in some ways. But it was like everyone's soul was stitched together into a tapestry, and we were all part of it. And in my child imagination, I felt that we were all God, and I felt that was a sin. And I remember standing at the back door of my mum and dad's house, looking out to the garden, which is just about there, and I was looking over to the sky, to the clouds, and I remember apologising to God. Because as a sin, you're a child, you wrestle with these kind of things. But that interconnectedness thing, it's funny because here I am, about 30 years later, and my understanding of things is exactly the same. I don't think I've changed in my sense of interconnectedness and how these kind of things work. All I've actually done, I guess, in my scientific side of my career, is try to find evidence that explains this intuitive idea of stuff. So that's kind of what I was going to cover tonight. And one of the things that always interested me was whether we can sense the future or not. Because if you can sense the future, then does that mean that the future is predestined? An area that scientists call presentiment. And presentiment is a pre-feeling. So rather than talking about precognition, which is the term that a lot of people use, pre-feeling is getting a sense of something, a feeling of something. And scientists measure this in the lab. And the way you can measure whether someone's getting a feeling, it's a more accurate way of saying, you know, when the Twin Towers was hit by the plane, or when the Lockerbie bombing took place and the plane crashed in Scotland, lots of thousands of people reported a premonition. Like they dreamt about it beforehand. And there's a lot of really good evidence of that kind of stuff. But it's hard to qualify in science, because it's kind of subjective, you know. It's like, you know, skeptics would say, well, anyone could say that, you know, I dreamt that kind of thing. So one of the things they did with presentiment research is you can measure emotion in how it outtangle that from your body. So when you feel an emotion, there's chemistry in the brain that is associated with that feeling. There's also an impact on your autonomic nervous system. So one of the things you can measure with when you feel an emotion is changes to the rhythms of your heart. The rhythm of your heart. So you have this thing called heart rate variability, which is how most people's heart, as you breathe in, it should increase, and as you breathe out, it should decrease. Increase, decrease with your breath. It's called heart rate variability. That changes by how you're feeling. You know, the height of the variability and how smooth it is. Another thing you can measure, which is directly related to emotion, is the amount of sweating in your skin. So you can measure the electrical conductance of your skin. If you're under a wee bit of stress, you sweat a wee bit, and that changes the electrical conductivity of your skin. So therefore what you'll see on the screen is a spike if you're stressed. If you're calm, it'll be the other way. So you can actually see some of the different ways that they measure emotion. And what they do with these pre-sentiments, or sensing the future experiments, is they sit people in front of a computer screen and they show them images that would elicit emotion. So it might be a negatively emotive images. So it might be like the scene of a horrific accident, right? Or it might be, you know, even an erotic image. Or it might even be an image of children playing, smiling, or even an Andrex puppy. You know, I've got one of them. I've got a 9-month-old Labrador. He's not so much a puppy now, he's almost fully grown, but he's a puppy in his head. I couldn't bring him tonight because he would have chewed through the table. You should see our tables and chairs, they're all teeth marks. Every single chair on our table, every single chair in the bottom of the tables is gnawed down to like just a wee thin pole when he was teething. But anyway, so responding 3 to 5 seconds before anything has happened, before the computer has even made a random selection. And the first thing you would think is, well, surely that's just anticipation, because if you might anticipate it's a negatively emotive image or a positively emotive image. But if that was the case, then the hit rate would be 50-50. You get it right half the time, you get it wrong half the time. But the hit rate in these experiments is significantly above that. And you measure odds against chance, or there's a statistical gold standard that you get. These results collectively are way above the statistical gold standard. So what you're left with is a real result. Something, in other words, we are sensing the future. And we're probably doing it all the time. We just don't notice that you're doing it all the time. And I think that's partly what intuition is. It is, we're always doing it. We just don't act of kindness for someone. Even a small gesture, you probably don't even notice how images that would elicit emotion. So it might be a negatively emotive images. So it might be like the scene of a horrific accident, right? Or it might be, you know, even an erotic image. Or it might even be an image of children playing, smiling, or even an Andrex puppy. You know, I've got one of them. I've got a 9-month-old Labrador. He's not so much a puppy now, he's almost fully grown, but he's a puppy in his head. I couldn't bring him tonight because he would have chewed through the table. You should see our tables and chairs, they're all teeth marks. Every single chair on our table, every single chair in the bottom of the tables is gnawed down to like just a wee thin pole when he was teething. But anyway, so you depend just anticipation, because if you might anticipate it's a negatively emotive image or a positively emotive image. But if that was the case, then the hit rate would be 50-50. You get it right half the time, you get it wrong half the time. But the hit rate of these experiments is significantly above that. And you measure odds against chance, or there's a statistical gold standard that you get. And these results collectively are way above the statistical gold standard. So what you're left with is a real result. Something, in other words, we are sensing the future. And we're probably doing it all the time. We just don't notice that you're doing it all the time. And I think that's partly what intuition is. It is, we're always doing it. We just don't act of kindness for someone. Even a small gesture, you probably don't even notice how. So what you're left with is a real result. Something, in other words, we are sensing the future. And we're probably doing it all the time. We just don't notice that you're doing it all the time. And I think that's partly what intuition is. It is, we're always doing it. We just don't act